This is quite the crazy story here. Exclusive from CNN, the U.S. seizes Venezuela President Nicolas Maduro's airplane in the Dominican Republic. The United States has seized Venezuela President Nicolas Maduro's airplane after determining that its acquisition was in violation of U.S. sanctions, among other criminal issues. The U.S. flew the aircraft to Florida on Monday, according to two U.S. officials. It's the latest development in what has long been a frosty relationship between the U.S. and Venezuela, and its seizure in the Dominican Republic marks an escalation as the U.S. continues to investigate what it regards as corrupt practices by Venezuela's government. The plane has been described by officials as Venezuela's equivalent to Air Force One, and it has been pictured in previous state visits by Maduro around the world. This sends a message all the way up to the top, one of the U.S. officials told CNN. Seizing the foreign head of state's plane is unheard of for criminal matters. We're sending a clear message here that no one is above the law, no one is above the reach of U.S. sanctions. In a statement, Attorney General Merrick Garland said that the Justice Department seized an aircraft that we allege was illegally purchased for $13 million through a shell company and smuggled out of the United States for use by Nicolas Maduro and his cronies. The plane was purchased from a company in Florida, the Justice Department said, and was illegally exported in April 2023 from the United States to Venezuela through the Caribbean. That must have been some operation. I'd like to see a documentary as to how that happened. But CNN cut into their news coverage with an exclusive report on this. And you talk about, you know, a narrative being shaped unconsciously from within the walls of the empire. Look at the first 2.5. We're only going to watch 2.5 minutes of this. The whole segment's about 6 minutes. But look at this coverage. This is pretty amazing.
Welcome back to the breaking news. Some exclusive live pictures that we're showing you right now of the seized plane belonging to Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. Maduro, we should note, is not on board, but the plane was seized by officials for violating U.S. sanctions. CNN's Kylie Atwood joins me now. Kylie, this is pretty extraordinary. This does not happen, obviously, every day where U.S. authorities go in and seize the plane of a head of state. But that is essentially what's happened this morning. Can you break this down for us?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the plane of Nicolas Maduro, the president of Venezuela, is now in the hands of the United States. As you can see there, those images demonstrate that it has just landed in Florida. It was seized by U.S. authorities in the Dominican Republic. That is according to multiple U.S. officials who spoke with our colleague Priscilla Alvarez about this. And how this all came to fruition, Jim, is that this plane was in the Dominican Republic in recent months. We don't know exactly why, but that presented the opportunity for U.S. authorities to work with authorities in the Dominican Republic to actually make up a plan and seize the plane. And just to give folks context, this plane is effectively the Air Force One of Venezuela. This is a plane that cost about $13 million, the U.S. estimates. It's been used by Maduro to travel around the world, to make visits, to see other world leaders and the like. It's now in the hands of the U.S. government. It's an extraordinary move. The U.S. has for years been trying to disrupt the flow of goods and...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like the Elvis plane at Graceland. You go on Elvis's plane at Graceland?
Of course I did.
Yeah. So here she goes. She starts talking about...
the thing I found most fascinating was the wood 8-track player.
Yeah, yeah.
The U.S. government. It's an extraordinary move. The U.S. has for years been trying to disrupt the flow of goods and finances, money going into Venezuela. For example, they have disrupted luxury cars going into the country.
Why?
But we should note that this is just such a bold move because according to one of those U.S. officials who spoke with our colleague, this is unheard of and sends a signal that no one is out of the reach of U.S. sanctions. So they clearly had their eye on this plane for a while that was being used by the president of Venezuela, and now it is in U.S. custody. Now, the process here is that now that it is in the United States, Venezuela can petition for the plane. So we'll watch and see what happens there.
Oh, they
but
can ask
also
for it
the
back.
United States can collect evidence from the plane.
We
just saw some folks heading into the plane, U.S. authorities heading in there with what appeared to be a recording device. They'll be able to collect evidence in terms of what the president of Venezuela was doing potentially on that plane. We'll watch and see how this all unfolds.
We'll watch and see. So what's astounding about that is that it just assumes that we have the right to do this. And it says, as a matter of fact, we've been trying to disrupt the flow of goods and revenue into Venezuela for years. And this just shows no one is beyond the reach of U.S. sanctions. This just proves that if you have oil under your ground, we will fuck with you until you give it to us. We will roust you until you give it to us. Of what business is it of ours to snuff around their Air Force One for evidence of what? What is our jurisdiction
what
here?
Did Venezuela do to us?
What did they do to? Why is this our problem? Why are they within our jurisdiction? Why do we get to investigate a foreign leader for corruption? What does this have to do with us at all, except for the fact that they have resources that we want cheap? And when a leader south of the border doesn't give us their resources cheap and turn their country into a plantation for the United States, we fuck with them in this way. And even by those standards, this, as CNN says, is unprecedented. This is a radical step, even by American standards. Now, they're saying the very purchase of this plane was in violation of U.S. sanctions. Well, that's like saying,
why do we have sanctions?
Right. That's like saying, like, why were they not allowed to buy this plane in the first place? Why? Because we don't like the way they run their government? Saudi Arabia is our ally. Israel, recent examples been in the news lately, is our ally. You think we care about that? Or you think we care about the oil? They don't make mention of this. This just assumes that we are going to investigate what's on this plane, and they're going to have to ask nicely to get the plane back. It just assumes that we have the right to just treat another foreign leader as if they're a store owner in like Little Italy 1922, where the mafia comes up and says, hey, what's yours is ours, or else we're going to have a problem. That's the subtext of this. It's no different whatsoever.
Well, if you are drinking the corporate media Kool-Aid, and you get into how they understand foreign policy, we are the good guys. Ultimately, we're trying to do right. And sometimes, because it's a complicated world, we accidentally do the wrong thing, but we don't mean to. And then there are countries like Venezuela that are, just wrong, and they're bad, and they're run by bad people. And gosh darn it, we have to do something about it. You know what it is? And it's very funny because the people who absorb these narratives also tend to be very woke. It's the white man's burden vision of the world, really. It's our responsibility. And we don't want this burden of civilizing other people and trying to protect their people from their corrupt governments. Gosh darn it, we're the world's only remaining superpower. And if we don't, who will? And as you point out, Saudi Arabia is our ally. If you want to even accept the premise that with Israel you have the fig leaf of the claim of it being a democratic country, even if you want to accept that, okay, so take Israel off the table. All right, so what about Saudi Arabia? What about the UAE? We have many allies that are deeply corrupt, that have no tradition of human rights. We arm these countries. We sell them weapons. Under Hillary's State Department, weapons sales to these countries went up because they had a whole backdoor bribery system through the Clinton Foundation. They would funnel money into the Clinton Foundation, and our State Department, lo and behold, would approve these arms sales, including to Saudi Arabia. So clearly that's not what it's about. So what is it about? Well, you got a country. If they had no oil, we wouldn't give a shit what goes on in Venezuela. They have oil. What is it? The world's largest proven reserves, right? Even more than Saudi Arabia in Venezuela. That's what this is all about. But you look at the average brainwashed American, and they actually think that this is about government corruption, which, hey, just if you stop for 1 second to think about it, let's say Venezuela is the most corrupt country in the history of governmental corruption. How is that our business?
Right. Right. Of course.
Why are we involved? Why are we seizing presidential planes? What does that have to do with us?
Yeah. Now, look, before we wrap this segment, we do have to give Joe Biden some credit because he did this, that he made this very bold move, knowing full well that his vice president and candidate for the presidency this November is an avowed communist. Don't forget, Donald Trump says Kamala Harris is a communist, and what he says goes. So it is an especially bold move when your VP is a communist who is sympathetic to communism and sympathetic to Nicolas Maduro. So he really went out on a limb there and took that action.
Please clap.